Okay, the title of this is e-bike retrofit, installing a Tongsheng TSDZ2 motor on a touring bike. And this is the touring bike. It's a custom-made C-SIP. It's a few years old. It has mechanical disc brakes and drop bars, and it's made for a small person. It's got 26-inch wheels. In the back, it's got a 36 tooth, or like a 1232, a 1236 set of sprockets, and it's got a Dior XT derailleur. The front derailleur and the bottom bracket was already removed in anticipation of this retrofit. So this is the kit we purchased, and we went to EcoCycles in Nashville, Tennessee. We bought it online. It's got open source firmware, so it's kind of the deluxe unit. Got to learn a little bit about the programming to work with the open source. But it had a nicer display, and that was one of the attractive features. The motor is 48 volt, and we bought 152 millimeter cranks because the rider is short, and the stock bottom bracket should fit the bike we're going to do. We ordered it with a peak gear upgrade, so that's like the peak gear is supposed to give better wear but not be as noisy as a metal gear, but we pay a premium for that feature. And the stock 42 tooth chainring with guard, we probably will be retrofitting that with a 38 tooth. And so the pre-installed cooling mod, that was done by EcoCycles. And the 1T1 wiring harness, and we'll see in a minute that may not be the right one for us. And we got the speed sensor and lighting kit, and we also bought this battery, which is the Jumbo High-Long Shark battery, and it's large and heavy but should give lots of range. It's 14.57 long, 3.56 wide, and 4.36 inches high. We have a fit problem. We're either going to have a custom bracket or well, we're looking not to do it on the rack, but custom bracket, or have new eyelets installed in a new position, because if you see this puppy, it's big, and there's the part that mounts to the bike, and the battery does come with a charger. That's a nice thing. And another nice thing about this is it comes with a pretty good set of instructions, so that part's impressive. Now if I walk back over to the bike and I say, well, I want to mount this thing on the bike, the problem is, and I already cut my finger on this thing, it's got sharp edges. The problem is our eyelets are in the wrong place, so perhaps we could get a couple new eyelets installed, but that's what we're dealing with. I'll show you what all we got. So starting with the TSDZ2 motor unit. This guy here is never in the web material. This is the torque take up. It goes behind the bottom bracket. An issue here is the clearance. So we have a derailleur cable going down to the bottom bracket, and probably have to reroute the cable because I don't think there's going to be sufficient clearance. And there's the stock 42 tooth chain wheel. We bought this speed sensor unit, so it's got a magnet and sensor. That's pretty straightforward. And from a cabling standpoint, yellow goes to yellow. That's pretty straightforward. We've got these 152 millimeter cranks. They provide a set of spacers. I'm not sure yet what the screws do, but the spacers are in case the chain line is off and the chain needs to be realigned for clearance reasons. These batter spacers go on the motor drive side. I guess these screws actually are to hold going through that bracket. Maybe you need longer screws if you're putting in the spacer. They do provide a bottom bracket spanner, which is kind of a nice touch. We opted for the head and tail light. So we get the head and tail light. That's straightforward enough. And then this is the wiring harness that we got with the head and tail light. And I'm kind of like trying to match up the so we have three, goes in, does, and goes out, does on the motor. One, the big fat one, goes to the battery. The yellow one goes to the speed sensor, and then so that leaves this other location. And here's our fancy motor control unit. Without any spacers, I haven't tried this yet, but maybe it'll fit our bars. It comes with little rubber donuts to go for 22.2 or 25 millimeter bars. But since we've got a road bike, it's got 31.8 millimeter bars. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge. But anyway, we have a green connector here. I have a cable with a green connector. Seems to go down and would match up with the motor unit. But then that leaves me with nowhere to connect this thing. So I'm going to have to contact EcoCycles and say, okay, what gives? I have three connections here, and I've got like a fourth wire that I don't know how to connect it. So that's it for now. Okay, so here we have the motor just kind of being dry fit into the frame. It appears that the motor slides all the way in without hitting. I gotta look about how to connect the torque take up. And I noticed my first kind of design problem is that the cables really come out on the wrong side of the motor. They're on the back end. They ought to be up front because then they wouldn't be in the way of the chain, but we're going to have a chain in there. And so managing the cables so that they don't get tangled up in the chain, I think it's going to be a problem. So more to come. But the way the motor just fits in, so there's the motor unit, goes off to the side. So yeah, right now I'm not liking it that the cables feed out the back of the motor. This is the torque take-up thing. I think I need to reverse it, but that's no big deal. Anyway, that's it. That's this installment. Okay, that's it for now. Okay, so I've taken the battery back off, and these are the screws to attach the battery mount. And right now, this thing is positioned to the top of its range, and the slots are all the way up. And I'm tightening the screws, but I'm using a 3 millimeter Allen key, so I can't go too tight. I'm going to just kind of use my experience in terms of torquing this thing, make it as tight as I feel is reasonable, because I think the problem we observed before is that it's pretty firm, pretty good. One more little check. Don't want it flopping around, but I don't want to strip out screws either. Okay, this is a before picture, kind of showing this accessory handlebar unit we bought on eBay, and this is the up-down control. This is the headlight. come around to the other side. This is the motor control unit and display, and then come down here, and there's like a jumble of wires, a lot of wires on the down tube, and then you get behind the bottom bracket, and there's more wires. Come over here. This is the speed sensor for the wheel, and then actually starting to tie these wires off, or this wire off. It goes to the tail light, which has a mounts nicely on this to this rack. So that's the situation right now, and I kind of wanted to show it before because there's going to be probably a couple hours work of like just tying off the wires and kind of trying to get it to look nice and tidy. Okay, well, here we are. Wires are tied off in the down tube. The motor unit is in, the chain is on, and wires are tied off on the C tube. And that's the underside of the battery. And I'm going to mount it into position, turn it on, and come over here, and the on off is a little smiley face, and it boots up. So no programming has been done yet, but we need to worry about how to program the clock. And this handlebar accessory is very nice. Things need to be tightened up still, but it's we actually are ready for a test ride. And programming, we'll have to research that, and I'll report back in a little bit. Okay, so looking at the finished e-bike, and this is actually after a few weeks of use, and it's been working well. It's very powerful. It's got really good range. A little bit noisy with the motor, and the setup's working well. So this is kind of like the control panel, and the only thing that's change the assist level. There's like 20 different levels. So it's like very powerful, very fast. We've got the clock set. And there's some things though, like resetting the odometer and going through the menus is kind of tricky. You go like a long press on this M button, and you can kind of go through the different menus. But it's a very it's a difficult user interface, and the settings with this open source software is you change something and inadvertently you get these unintended consequences, like the motor assist is not working properly. So we've kind of got something that's working, and we're slowly kind of working through finding out how to reset the odometer and do other things. But meanwhile, it's quite usable and workable. So that's the situation right now. This is kind of the end point of this video. And at some future point, if I can get it together, we'll go through like changing the settings and working on the program. Bye. This is the end. Okay, mile 300, and just checking things, and I just wanted to point this out. Loosened up a little bit, or just seated itself a little bit. So it's just a good idea after riding some distance to come and check everything for tightness. We noticed that there was a little additional noise coming from the pedal and bottom bracket area, and certainly everything, pedal, crank arm, bottom bracket, everything had loosened up a little bit. So good idea after you've ridden it for a couple of weeks, go through and check everything for tightness.